Hello, I'm Mayor Watt. That's ohmTown. Oh, I almost messed that up. ohmTown is what I'm the mayor of. And hello. And what ohmTown is, you know what? I have to get a window out of the way. And what ohmTown is a news aggregator. And I filter a bunch of news. I'm starting to lose count. I could probably find out exactly how many it is, but somewhere in the 150 now. I've actually removed some older news organizations from my aggregator, and I'm looking for new ones. But I filter all of the news based on certain keywords, and I filter them into these 6 categories: create, news, education, entertainment, social, and technology. I try to keep this within an hour time frame of streaming so that you can go on about your business, or you can go and read the articles that I introduce. But I'm happy to discuss things as the news progresses. Thanks for coming. If you are hanging out in chat, just remember that there's also the YouTube channel. There's a podcast. It's actually a day behind. I'm in the progress of updating those right now. And we're actually around 87 episodes now. I started at the beginning of the year, so still brand new. The glue is still drying on everything. Yeah, if you do something a little too wild, it might snap, so be careful. At any rate, I grab about 20 headlines that I find interesting. Is there a rhyme or reason to it? Not particularly. Is there an order, or the really interesting stuff is at the end? No, not really, because it's such a broad spectrum of interests that I have that I figured if I put them in any particular order, other people aren't going to be as interested in some element of it anyway. So again, there's 6 categories, and then within that, there are 50 channels. But let's not waste any more of your time. Let's just get into this. Today's first episode, or first article, I should say, is that the pandemic isn't over. Hey, well, lots of restrictions are falling away, but Shanghai is imposing a staggered lockdown district by district. And it says, unlike other Chinese cities, Shanghai had never before imposed a full-scale citywide lockdown, but the current measure comes close. So this is a New York Times article written by John Liu. And this is something that I have witnessed before in other articles, similar news. But basically, cities are shutting down various areas. And by shutting down, I mean there are gates, there are fences that are erected. They're basically stopped. You're not allowed to leave. Nobody's allowed to come in while there is some restriction in place. And by no means is this limited to just the coronavirus outbreak. It is possible to be locked down for various other reasons in regions throughout China. Wherever there is a big enough city to have a policy like this in place, it can be implemented. So it says Shanghai, China's largest city and a global financial center, saw daily new cases spike to over 2,600 on Sunday, from just a handful in early March. Hospitals and medical staff are stretched thin. Some neighborhoods and other districts with a concentration of cases have already been under lockdown for over a week, with an increasing number of people reporting problems securing daily necessities, including medical supplies. This is exactly what happened when the outbreaks first started appearing in China. And all of these masks and all of this policy, we're wearing masks and promoting the vaccine in the United States and elsewhere. Other countries are doing the same thing. They're not locking down entire cities unless they absolutely have to, and they're not really locking them down in the same sense. They're trying to restrict egress and ingress, basically trying to stop the spread of this virus. And a lot of people kind of, well, quote unquote, from a recent political gathering, they're sick of it. Well, you know what you're really sick of? Getting a virus that can pretty much lay you low permanently. Not just make you sick, but it can kill you. And if it doesn't kill you, it makes you sick permanently. From low lung capacity to brain fog. And I don't want to see anybody get it. So do what's necessary to stay healthy. And wearing a mask is just the beginning of it. That said, let's continue on. The next article is in the Daily News Show. And Nevada casino to pay $8 million for serving chemicals, not beer. This is kind of rough. A teacher was permanently injured when he was served cleaning solvents. I'm sure that was a mistake. Yeah, this is an interesting one, right? A jury in Las Vegas awarded $8 million to a 38-year-old middle school special education teacher who sued after being permanently injured when he was served cleaning solvents instead of tap beer at a casino bar. There had to have been video of this, because otherwise it would have been he said, she said kind of a thing, right? Lon Enright, 38, used to also work as a wine steward at Las Vegas strip restaurants, but lost his sense of taste due to the December 2018 injury at a Barley's Casino and Brewing Company in Henderson. His attorney, Andre Lagomarsino, said Friday. Yeah, it's a hard mistake to make. Yeah, when I'm pouring a beer, I always have to make sure that I didn't reach entirely under the counter to get the cleaning materials. These things, I have to chuckle because I can't get it out. My sarcasm is strong, but in cases like this where I'm talking about the news, how in the world? So, Enright, a PhD, continues to teach and coach basketball, but has stomach and esophageal cancer, ulcers, not cancers, and is at increased risk of cancer. The attorney characterized the jury award as compensation for the loss of enjoyment of life. Yeah, well, if you can't taste anything anymore and you have ulcers, I'm not sure if it's gonna go into anything. He asked for a sample of honey blonde ale on tap and was served caustic chemicals commonly used to clean beer taps and lines. Oh, so they were out of service, but they still pulled a beer through it. So Enright's attorneys, including Rahul Ravipudi, said Barley's admitted liability and offered $300,000 in damages before trial. Yeah, for permanently harming somebody. Yeah, that's how they ended up with $8 million, and at least a jury trial, right? I think that's what happened here. Yeah. Yep, there you go. That's what liability is all about. But let's go on to the next article. I didn't put it into chat. I'm really sorry here. Let's back this up a bit. And here it is in chat. You can go over and read the rest of that article if you are so inclined. Come on back, and if you find something that is interesting to you to talk about, then we can talk about it some more. Not that I want you to leave the stream, but yeah, Brildane, I would not give up my sense of taste for $300,000. I wouldn't give it up for $8 million, as a matter of fact. I do know somebody personally that when they were younger, they didn't follow the rule about checking what a chemical might be, where you can take whatever the bottle is if it's unlabeled, and you can kind of go like that over the lid, so it just kind of wafts with a lot of oxygen over your nose, and you can kind of get a sense of it. I don't even do that. It's hard for me to. I wouldn't risk it. If I don't know what's in it, I would probably pour a little bit out and analyze it a little bit more than kind of waft my hand over it so chemicals go blowing in my face. But He lost his sense of smell and taste because he stuck his nose over a bottle of ammonia and wiped out his sense of smell altogether and taste. So as far as I know to this day, he still can't taste or smell anything other than like really light sensation. So teachable moment, folks. Don't inhale anything from a bottle that you don't know what the contents is. And unfortunately, some people might take that advice a little bit over the top because of an article like this about beer. Take a little sip and see if it is really wonky, and then drink the whole thing if you want. But just be aware accidents happen, not to turn you all paranoid. And yeah, I do too. Yeah. Let's see. Next article's over in the Smack Talk channel. Apple may keep iPhone 14 camera bump to hold larger 48 megapixel sensor. There's a lot of talk about megapixel growth. The number of megapixels don't really matter. I've always been of the ilk that the more the megapixels and the larger the frame, the more I can digitally manipulate. So if I can take a horrible picture, yet I have enough data in it that I can chop out what the bad stuff is so that I've got a good picture, it's better than not having any picture. So I want more megapixels. I want higher resolution overall, right? So at 48 megapixels, we're really at the upper limit of what might be needed for regular average Joe photography. Obviously, if you're using full frame cameras and you're taking professional photography, you edit things, you may want more even on top of that. So it's all about capabilities, overall capabilities. So the article says the camera bump on the back of the latest iPhone 14 Pro and the iPhone 14 Pro Max schematic leaks will be bigger to accommodate the larger image processing in analyst claims, and the shift to a 48 megapixel sensor requiring more space. So on March 22nd, allegedly leaked diagrams of Apple's fall iPhone refresh indicated a probability that the camera bump will remain. And if there is one thing, I'm going to click this link, but it'll take us over to appleinsider.com, and this article was written by Malcolm Owen. Way back when I did a strategic analysis of Apple, and one of the things that I observed was that, here, I'm going to stop it right here. You won't be able to see my cursor, but what you're looking at is the camera array on the back of an iPhone. And one of the things that I witnessed and I included it in my analysis, was the fact that there is an ecosystem around each of the devices. And by that, I mean, if Apple weren't to relocate the camera array or the buttons along the side, no one would need a new case. But every time there is a phone released or a tablet released, fundamental aspects of its engineering changes, but only slightly, just enough to do what? To warrant having to go out and buy another case. Pretty much every single time. I don't know of a single case, short of one that goes around the perimeter and doesn't do anything to protect the innards of the sides, right? So like this one actually has a clear case, but it surrounds the camera array. So if these cameras move over 3 millimeters one way or the other, they're no longer within that window and you have to buy a new case. And so there's millions of dollars spent every single time they release a new product that shifts these things just a little bit. And that right there is an ecosystem that makes basically the market very lucrative to be in. It's kind of like every time you run out of a loaf of bread, you have to go and get another loaf of bread, right? Every time a new phone drops, you're going to have to get a whole new everything. And while I think that it's great for business, Customers, on the other hand, are throwing away a lot of stuff or including it when they're selling it or passing it down. But it is what it is. In this particular case, the article is about a 48 megapixel camera, and I'll probably upgrade to this phone. It's been several years now since I've upgraded because I can't justify $1,100 every year or every 2 years. That said, love the phone. Very robust. Never had a problem. Knock on wood. Knock on wood. But let's continue on with the next article, which is in Warcrafters. This week in PC Gaming, it's an article about Weird West, Abermore, Death Stranding Director's Cut. And it's over at PC Gamer. I'm just going to go over to it. And did I throw it in there? Yeah. So this is an article over at PCGamer.com written by Lauren Aitken. And it says it's all about assembling crews and handling sensitive packages this week. So let's take a look at what's coming out. I'm going to pause this video. But Weird West, if you haven't seen it yet, is the next, well, it's an isometric Western game, and you are tasked basically with solving various, tasks. You are assigned things and you have to go and take care of them. I haven't played it yet, but I've watched people play it and I love the graphics. It's sort of a real-time sim kind of a game. You're moving a character through a Western setting, and you have to, if you don't do it the right way, you'll end up having to start that level over. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, the sound effects are fun. The screen, the graphics are high resolution. It's a blast. I have never watched Abermore. Let's see if it talks about it in here. No, it doesn't. Sorry for scrolling up and down. But they have a video, and you'll be able to watch or listen to the audio side of it by clicking on a little button here on the PC Gamer. So you'll have to go over and watch the video because I won't play it in the stream. Just not my nature. Maybe if one of the publishers says that they don't mind me streaming it, I just haven't pursued that. But Death Stranding, if you've never seen Death Stranding, this game has an amazing story. Great graphics. For me, it's kind of grindy because you have to do a lot of walking around. But the concept of it, the art, the story, it might throw some people off. For me, when I was younger, I probably wouldn't have cared about it as much, as just because, I really lacked the world context of this. But then as a parent, as a dad, watching a game where there's a baby inside a little a glass vial that's attached to you, and providing information, and it caught me off guard, just how into the story I became, and it has a great ending. So be sure, if you've never seen anybody play it, then go and check it out. Co-Carnage, by the way, is the person that I watched go through this playthrough, and I watched others too, but he posts all of his playthroughs, which are to me quite expeditious. Yeah, he's very good at the game and at games, and doesn't seem to waste time. Like when I'm playing a game, I'll sit there and waste time, and I think that it might be boring for people to watch me stream, but co-grinds through it like nobody's business, including Weird West. You can check it out. Has anybody in chat played that? Either Death Stranding or Weird West? if you know about Abermore, then let me know. I haven't seen it, but you can go and check it out over at PC Gamer. Okay, so let's continue on. I know that there's a lag in the chat, so I try to wait about 20 seconds because that's how long the lag is apparently. It seems shorter for other people, so I don't know if it's something having to do with my stream, that I'm not like a partner or anything like that. Which reminds me, I don't ask for this often, but if you are not following me here on Twitch, then please follow me here on Twitch. It gives me some more benefits that I can extend to viewers, but I don't normally kind of push myself out there like that. I do have a counter. That follower goal right there is about halfway through, and that's just for affiliate. So hopefully it's not really an issue. Yeah. April. Yes, it could be for all kinds of reasons. For me, I've got gigabit internet, so I hope that it's not that, but I know how the internet can impact performance in a perfect world, you know. This next article is over at Hatch Ideas channel. Elon Musk reveals 3 existential threats he's scared of, including a declining birth rate, religious extremism, and artificial intelligence going wrong. Matthias Dopfner, the CEO of Insider's parent company, recently interviewed Tesla CEO Elon Musk. In response to the questions, "What's your biggest fear?" he stated those 3 existential threats. So I'm going to click this link, and it'll take us over to Business Insider, who's a recent addition to my aggregator. This article is written by Hannah Towey, Towey. I hope I'm pronouncing it properly. They have a lot of white space in their article, just so you know as I'm scrolling. I hope I don't make anybody nauseous. So he says, I spent a lot of time thinking about the birth rate thing. That might be the single biggest threat to the future of human civilization. There has been discussions with me about this specific thing, that the birth rate is declining, and it's declining in certain places and not in others. And that can impact everything from the education sector, where if there aren't enough human beings going through the education sector, then there aren't enough educated people that take advantage of education, right, to its fullest capacity, and then end up in the workforce doing fundamental research, et cetera, right? Arguably. But to me, that kind of screams of not really that declining birth rates matter, but that the cost of going to the cost of getting an education, it being founded in science, the idea that we are, and well, there's a large cohort of humanity that is anti-globalist, where anybody from anywhere can get a reliable education and be competitive in the workplace and a holistic human being. There's a lot of people that really don't like the idea that someone from, the Middle East can go to Europe, or someone from Europe can come to the United States. It's beyond reasoning to me that you can look at another human being and gatekeep like that. But there are a large cohort of people that are rather limited in their worldview, and think that a person from somewhere else can be a threat instead of an asset. Well, everybody's competing for things, and the cat's out of the bag in terms of keeping them away from us. That kind of mentality really should be stamped out in humanity, and not just in a particular culture. That said, I don't really agree with the declining birth rate issue. The planet needs to be at some level of stasis, and humans really use science to go beyond what the natural order of things would be. Not saying that that's a bad thing either. You know, we become better using technology and science, and so maybe we can monitor it and do great things with what we have. And so these other concerns, right? Let's scroll back up to look at the title again. So it reveals 3 existential threats he's scared of. And religious extremism, that falls in line with the whole declining birth rate thing and the anti-globalism thing, and the us versus them thing. If you're not part of my group, then you're on the outs of my group. And extremism in any situation is bad. And as for artificial intelligence, I can predict that the moment that you have an artificial intelligence that can make decisions and grow beyond its programmer's bounds, which has actually happened to some degree, but the intelligence is limited to what the programmers define it. So at some point, artificial intelligence will be superior to humans. It already learns faster. It just lacks context. It lacks empathy and sympathy, compassion. It lacks emotion. It lacks understanding because it's zeros and ones and only programmed to understand what the programmers define it. But there have been examples where an artificial intelligence has performed machine learning with another artificial intelligence, and they've created a meshing language that the original programmers didn't intend to actually have created. It created its own middleware. Pardon me one second. And that was quite surprising to the programmers. Maybe I can find that article and talk about it in the next episode. But let's continue on. I don't want to take up much beyond an hour. We typically end up going beyond it, but I know your time is valuable. The next article is in The Word in Tech. And Apple will reportedly release an iPad Pro with an M2 chip this fall. Again, it's one of those things where if you've been upgrading and upgrading, every time they release, then you probably won't need an M2. There won't be a big enough jump, but an M1 to an M2, questionable. If you have something in an Intel chip, with an Intel chip, I should say, you should probably upgrade to the M2 if it's released, mainly because the software is now getting attuned for its internal metal instead of the Intel chip. And it makes a performance difference to a great degree. And Intel chips are using different Wi-Fi. So now we have Wi-Fi 6 instead of 5. It's much faster. It's more reliable. It's more secure. And it has longer legs. So it's going to be updated more often, the firmware, to keep it on track with security. Here it says Apple is reportedly planning to release an iPad Pro with a rumored M2 chip sometime between September and November of this year, according to Apple tracker Mark Gurman's Power On newsletter. Gurman expects Apple to issue a major update for the upcoming generation of iPad Pros, which will supposedly include support for MagSafe charging, and that is really what I want. I really despise cables, and having one hanging off of my iPad just bugs me. If I'm going to be attached to something, I want to be able to just get it and go and not have to worry about a cable being physically attached. And then they did something nutty with their display, their new display, and they've hardwired the cable into it, so you can't. There's no MagSafe connector on the new display, which was bizarre. So let's see. Roldane says, I've had an iPad and I can't do anything with it anymore because nothing on it is supported. It's just a paperweight. Yeah. that happens over time. And unfortunately, the only way that it can really be remedied is whatever it is that used to work never gets deleted off of it, because the apps aren't even available anymore to re-download, because the developers, at one point, the developers were told you have to convert everything over to 64-bit. And now on M.2, you have to make them, well, you don't have to. There's middleware that will make it still work with an M series. But to make it more efficient and not grind the battery down, you have to you have to recode it, recompile it for the M1 or M2 when it comes out, the M1, I'm sure. But that's on the developer to make it work. And unfortunately, depending on the age, they just stop babysitting their app. They got their money. And then, the various Apple applications, they should be running on previous generations, but at some point it all fails. And unfortunately, you got to just upgrade, but trade it in or donate it. And some software will still work. Let's go over to the source of this article. This is an article at The Verge. It's written by Emma Roth. And it says here, it may also support the MagSafe charging. And like I said, that's the thing that's really nice for me. Getting rid of cables is just wonderful. Let's see, does it say anything else exciting in here? No, not really. There hasn't been much information about the rumored M2 chip either. Well, Apple was doing a really good job of hiding the M1 Ultra chips that are in the new Mac Studio. So I'd be surprised if anything leaks about the M2 before Apple is ready. There will be rumors. Usually it seems to come out of China. But let's continue on. Let's go on to the next article. I kind of said everything that's in that article without reading the article. The next article is over in the Jewel Crafting channel. Again, this is a new channel, not really new, but it's new for me to be integrating it to a greater degree here in ohmTown News. And it's about this sector of crafting jewelry and highlighting either the product or the people. But it says here, what's the proper way to insulate the brass so that it doesn't tarnish? And it says, on several pieces I've created, I've included brass rods, tubes, etc. What's the proper way to insulate the brass so that it doesn't tarnish? And I suppose insulate might be used in a different way here. But this article is over at jewelrymakingjournal.com, and it's written by Wayne Kaiser. And let's scroll down here a little bit and see. They make comments. It's basically a question, right? So you ask the question and then people can answer it. And so there are people that are saying you can protect it by covering it with something, a lacquer. I protect mine simply by adding a polish to it, but then you have to polish it again and again and again, and friction rubs it away. So it's never, if you don't ever want to have to polish brass, you simply don't use brass because it's hard to not protect it with something like a varnish of some kind. And that's what I do. I use a varnish or a wax and protect the brass or copper or pretty much anything that can oxidize. Let's see here. I don't know if anybody really says anything. But there's a bunch of different products out there. So if you are interested in stuff like this, you should go over to jewelrymakingjournal.com because they are literally a discussion board of this. But sometimes I find some really interesting discussions here if you're interested in this area. So let's continue on to the next one. I like talking about this material here, Polymer Clay, because it has some some great features. You can pretty much create anything that you want, and you don't necessarily have to cast it the way that you would want something that is actually longer lasting. But polymer clay can last for a considerable amount of time. It says here, I discovered polymer clay and the things have never been the same. The possibilities are endless, and each piece takes me in a new direction. So again, this is over at jewelrymakingjournal.com. And they show a piece, and that is polymer clay. And it's written, this is an article, not an article, this is a post called The Joys of Polymer Clay by Jackie Lockentor, sorry. And it can look and act just like metal. And in fact, there is metal clays. You can actually get silver and copper clays that are 99% copper or silver, right? And what happens, what you do is you shape it the way you want it shaped, and then you put it in a kiln and it burns out the binder, but everything fuses together and you have a solid metal object. But you can do similar with polymer clay, and once it hardens, you have a semi-permanent item, and only through abuse will it decompose, will it break, or anything like that. So this artisan is making these really complex pieces. The one that I'm showing on the screen right now looks like 2 twigs with something inside it. And you can embed crystal or gems or actual metals in the polymer, and it'll stay there just like a setting. And it's pretty neat. So this person has an Etsy store as well called Morningstar Sanctuary Studio. So you can check that out as well. But if you're interested in this kind of stuff, go over to jewelrymakingjournal.com. And obviously, I would like you to come back to ohmTown and chat about it there too. Most of my traffic at ohmTown, though, are people that are interested in the headlines and following the links. They don't really chat, and I don't do anything artificial to promote that discussion. So people really don't post there. I actually spoke about this in a previous episode, that other news aggregation sites and social networks actually create fake users that post. And it's all fluff and smoke and mirrors, but the adage is for any startup, really, fake it till you make it. So I don't really buy into that. So here I am streaming and talking about the news and not telling everybody, there's lots of chatting over there. And then I have a fake program making posts. So let's continue on, though, before I go down that rabbit hole. The next article is in the Hatch Ideas channel. And this is the title of this article caught me off guard because I haven't heard anything about Friends, and I don't know how long. Short of people going, I hate that show. But I liked it. And not everybody knows about it, but it was basically a sitcom and very popular in the United States. I'm not sure where else it was played. But this is See Inside a Friends-themed house that's on sale for $330,000 in Texas. It comes with a Central Perk-style lounge and Monica's iconic blue and purple kitchen. Central Perk was a coffee shop that they always visited. And it says it's a 2-bedroom house inspired by the TV show Friends, and it's up for sale for $330,000. The Texas-based property has amenities including a Central Perk-themed lounge. It also has a garage that comes with a 220-volt charger for Teslas. And a Texas-based house seems the perfect fit for diehard fans of the TV show Friends. Not sure why that would seem accurate, but okay. And they actually give the property's address. So let's go over and take a look. I'm sure there's some pictures. This is a BusinessInsider.com article written by Zara Tayeb. And I wonder if it's a style lounge. Okay. Yeah. So it has the couch that looks close to what's in Central Park and the little side chair and a little table. Oh, and the front here looks like the front counters where people used to play music in the show. Let's scroll down a little bit and see if there's more to it. Yep, it has a feature wall that has Friends written across it, like the show's title. And let's see, let's keep going. Oh, it actually says Central Perk on the wall, like it's written on glass. And it has the outside and a cab painted on it. It's interesting. I don't know, you end up with a house that's themed like this. Like I want one that is steampunk styled. But then when you go to sell it, you have to reverse all of that or you're going to find just one person that wants it. Or somebody that's going to lowball you and then flip it after they tear out or repaint or recondition everything that's in this house. I'm sure that there's one Friends fanatic that is going to say, yeah, I think it's worth moving to Texas to get this. Oh, they even there's an episode where they're carrying a couch up the stairs and it gets stuck. And so he's screaming, pivot, pivot. Ross is screaming, pivot. Okay. You can go check out the rest of the article. It's over at businessinsider.com. Let's go on to the next one. If you are a reader, then you'll like this link. Oops. Someone's out way too much effort into that. Yeah, I would say so too. That's disappointing. It's why you can't trust reviews. Which part of that? I might have said something that I missed when I said it out loud. But let me know, bro. So this next article is in the Marble Channel. 18 new works of fiction to read this spring. New novels from Jennifer Egan, Allie Smith, Hernan Diaz. Fake chatting on websites. Yep. Eventually you find out things like the story about eBay starting up as a means for somebody, the boyfriend, to sell the girlfriend's Beanie Babies. That was all marketing hype. It was to give a well-financed startup something for the public to hold on to that was different than what the truth was. And so the story has a little bit of truth in it, but the reality is that it was a well-funded startup with the intent to create an auction site. But it's lost in the history of time. So you can actually do a search for what the real story about eBay was. So there's this article here is 18 new works of fiction to read this spring. So let's click the link and go over to the New York Times. It's an article written by Jomana Khatib. I think that's how I'm pronouncing it correctly. And Elizabeth Egan. And they actually list all of the books. So if you are a reader, then be sure to come over and check this all out. I don't read. Okay, so let me rephrase that. I do read, but I can't read for pleasure, really. Like I can't just grab a book off the shelf and read anymore. I'm typically reading research papers and textbooks and things like that. All of this is really for everybody who's watching. Go over to newyorktimes.com or click the link. Again, it will always be in the discussion in the show notes or in the discussion portions of ohmTown or in the podcast show notes too. They get put everywhere. That the show stays. They don't stay on Twitch because I only have 14 days before they're purged, so it kind of sucks. But it's the reason why I started saying I need people to follow me on Twitch. Otherwise, these shows don't stay as long. So one of the reasons why I clicked on this was because of this. Not only do I have, let me click back to ohmTown, but I have a channel that I want to bring that talks about creative writing here on Aerith, and another one on Breaking Prose. Aerith is about fantasy world building. Breaking Prose is about everything else. But I also have a show that I want to talk about called Temporology, which is the science and science fiction of time and time travel. And so I have sources for this kind of thing. And then when I stumble across an article that makes mention of time travel, my aggregator grabs it and throws it into a particular channel wherever it's seen first. And so here's some time traveling novels. So there's a lot of stuff, books in translation, and it continues on. So I'm going to scroll up real fast. Avert thine gaze if fast moving web pages makes you uneasy. I've started saying this in every episode of the ohmTown Daily News. So go over to New York Times and check it out. The next article is in the Law Nerd channel. Some lawyers are reluctant to return to the office and leave their pets. When I see people out walking their dog, I say to myself, it's really rough because I did not mean to be punny there. Rough. Anyway, so this is really only lawyers. This is because it comes out of the ABA Journal website, so it got funneled into, and it's decidedly focused on attorneys. But one of the areas of interest that I have is law. I'm actually going through a kind of an intro law program right now, and this article is written by Danielle Braff, and it says one side effect of the ongoing COVID-19 epidemic is that lots of people have adopted pets, according to a May 2021 report from the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. 1 in 5 households, about 23 million U.S. homes, adopted a cat or dog since the beginning of the pandemic. And then they say call it the puppy or pussycat pandemic. I don't know about that. Anyway, a lot of people adopted an animal because they were stuck at home and they wanted a little companion to hang out with. Not to mention, if you go to a shelter and you find a dog or a cat, you can give them a forever home, right? And that's really what it is when you adopt. So these people now rightfully are thinking, oh, I don't know if I want to return to the office because now I have to abandon my pet for 8 hours out of the day or more. And if you've watched previous episodes with any regularity, you'll know that my take on this is if you're an attorney, you don't even have to set your butt in an office unless you're meeting a client, and then you can meet them at the office at that given time, X, Y, or Z time. Not everybody can afford to do that in terms of responsibility in the workplace. They sometimes have to do hands-on so that they have to be in the workplace. But many people have adopted pets and are now having to change their ways. And I just think that this is I think it's horrible that people have to go into the office, even though all that they're doing is, pushing papers, or talking on the phone. Yeah. So pets don't like being left alone. I can go out for 20 minutes with dad still at home. And a Bard, is that that's the name of your dog? Yeah. There's some, and then they become really accustomed to your presence. And so, like my Savannah cats, they've bonded to my wife. Oh, it's your cat. I'm sorry. And, yeah, so my Savannah cats have bonded to my wife, not me. And even though I'm the reason they're in the house, um, it might be because I'm the enforcer, right? I've got the deep voice, and I'm not the one that bounces around as much. But these cats, they know what my wife's car sounds like. So when she leaves, they're at the door waiting for her to return. They're in the windows waiting to see her car at a given time. And if she goes anywhere, they follow her like little dogs, even though Savannahs are actually pretty big. At any rate, we hate the idea now that people are requesting the return to work. So we're all fighting it, but this old world thinking that you have to have a butt in a seat to be considered work, to me is absurd, but it is what it is. And until we're all financially independent, we're at somebody else's beck and call, so to speak. This next article is back to Elon Musk. It's in the Hatch Ideas channel. But it's an article from Business Insider, and it says Elon Musk said he's confident society will solve, quote unquote, the climate issue. It's just a question of when. He predicted that solar power will be the main long-term way that civilization is powered. But until the transition is made, he said, countries need to maintain nuclear energy. So I'm going to click this link, take us over to Business Insider. And this is written by Hannah Toei as well. And my take on this, which I typically give my take, my context to articles. Sometimes reporters just report, and sometimes they're kind of like a talking head, particularly on politics. But in this particular case, me as the talking head, I've mentioned this in previous episodes as well, that it's really hard to make solar and wind and geothermal defensible, right? So even the nuclear power plant that was taken over by Russian forces in Ukraine, that is more defensible by military forces if it would have been prepared for this invasion. And so other countries who think that solar is defensible, it is not, because it can take, all it takes is one bullet or one rock to shatter the glass, or penetrate through the substrate, and you have a completely ruined solar array. This has happened in people's houses where they've got a solar array on their roof and somebody has fired a BB gun and it shatters a pane, and it instantly closes down a large portion of power. And the same thing happens with wind. You can throw a blade out of balance and it'll destroy itself. Same thing happens with geothermal, in that all you have to do is drop something heavy, a bomb, let's say, and you've disrupted the processes of geothermal power generation. Now, nuclear is much more defensible, and oil and gas is much more defensible. You can put it in containers and bury it in the ground and take it out in a more controlled manner. I'm not a proponent of either of those because of the negatives that are associated with it. But until we can address those other issues with green energy, you always are going to end up with the possibility of losing your power because of a conflict somewhere. So, as I've said in the previous episodes, what we need to do is exploit our technology so that there is no reason for conflict. But unfortunately, let me bring it up to this, the top of this page. Unfortunately, you have a lot of sociopaths who think that fighting a war is supposed to be a beneficial thing. And while it has been in history, for whatever forces are the winners. The problem is that society now has the ability to use technology to overcome pretty much all obstacles except the political, the narrow-minded, the sociopathic, the ones that want to fight for profit or power. It's absurd in the 21st century. We should be all working together and taking ourselves over to Mars and then to mine resources from far-flung worlds. I want Star Trek, simply put. And that's when people say, you're naive. And I say that pretty much every episode now, too. This next article is Tabletop Nights channel. That's all about gaming, tabletop gaming. This is a Kickstarter check-in, Salty Hounds. And it says, developer Topping Palette has begun a Kickstarter campaign for Salty Hounds. The game is an dating sim RPG where players manage a security agency in a dynamic modern city. It is in development for PC, Mac, Nintendo Switch, and mobile platforms. So players control the new manager of the eponymous Salty Hounds, a struggling private security agency. So let's see. Let's click on over. Takes you to rpgamer.com. And it's kind of a weird, so it has a 10,000 euro funding goal, and the campaign is set to run until April 24th. That said, I am interested in Kickstarters, mainly because I like to promote entrepreneurship, startups. What I do when I'm not streaming during the day is pretty much that, advising people and supporting the efforts of entrepreneurs in strategic management, in business, in technology. So whenever there is a Kickstarter, and this is the first of a series where I'll be including these kind of articles in the stream, in the hopes that I can eventually get enough information where I can break it out and actually run an entire show each weekend, Saturdays typically, for about 2 hours, that focuses on startups and websites like services, I really should say, not just websites, but services like Kickstarter. In the meantime, you can go over and check this out if you're interested in this kind of stuff. The next one is in Hatch Ideas as well. This is the headline. It's not me. But the headline is, I tested out the $200 almond cow milk, plant milk maker. Wow. And I can't believe how much I'll be saving on oat milk. Now, I've seen a previous product like this, and it didn't seem to work out. But this says the almond cow makes plant milk from nuts, oats, coconut flakes, and more. I tested it out to see how the milk compared to store-bought. The initial buy-in is pricey, but I think it's worth it for oat milk lovers. Plant milk, especially almond and oat varieties, has exploded in popularity over the past few years. So I'm going to click this link. It takes us over to Business Insider. It's written by Mary Meisenzahl. And this is really similar to another product that I've seen. I don't think it's the exact same. But basically, you mince stuff up, throw it in it, it cooks, and then you can cool it down. And then I'm going to keep on scrolling. And then you dump out the pulp after squeezing it, and you have oat or whatever plant milk source. You just throw out the pulp. So it says, my first impression was that it seemed kind of like a powerful blender with a few extra pieces. Yeah, this is almost exactly the product, but I can't remember the other product. It just didn't look like this. And the way that I was shown to do this was with a blender, and then you squeeze it out using like cheesecloth. And It has zero preservatives. You have to consume it pretty fast, and take care of it. You don't let it sit out, and it can separate. So much different than what you would buy from a retail store-bought kind of plant milk product. Not to mention, you still have to buy the raw materials and do all of the work. So I'm going to keep on scrolling so that you can see it. But I think this is, yeah, it's going through step by step. So it's really, if you want to know more about it, then go over to the Apple Insider article and check it out. It does save you, mainly because you can make it at the rate that you want it made. You're not buying something and then it sits and spoils, or you're not buying a bunch and wasting the money because you're not consuming it. And it's fresher with zero preservatives, and you don't pay for packaging and whatnot other than the raw materials, which you can eat the raw materials when you're not making milk out of the stuff. So I may try it at some point, but I don't make it myself. The next article is something that kind of blew me away when I saw it. Meet a 22-year-old receptionist who works at, quote unquote, the most luxurious hotel in the world, where rooms cost up to $25,000 a night. And I have never been there, but it's the Burj Al Arab. Let's see here. The best hotel in the world is what the receptionist said. She started out in the luxury hospitality industry 2 years ago as a butler in the Maldives. Here's what it's like to work in the iconic Dubai resort, where suites cost up to $25,000 a night. It says the difference between a 5-star hotel and the Burj Al Arab, which has been described as the world's only 7-star hotel, is not the gold-plated ceilings and complimentary Hermes perfume. Once you're at the top. Okay, let's go click this. So if you've never seen this building, it's pretty amazing. Architecturally, it looks pretty cool. This article, again, is over at Apple Insider. It's written by Hannah Towey, Towey. And so the picture shows the hotel and the receptionist. And let's scroll down a little bit and see if there's something of interest here. The young pro speaks fluent French, Spanish, and English on the phone. Even her voice sounds luxurious. All right there, bub. It's a repertoire that comes in handy when she checks in jet-setting guests to the Burj suites, which range from $1,200 a night to $25,000 a night. I can't even justify $1,200 a night. My gosh. But I guess, I've been told this before. It is a wedge, but let's see. It's hard to see it, but it has a lot of interesting architectural features in its design, but it's supposed to be this art piece. But I appreciate a lot of different things. What I don't appreciate about it is, well, first it's location, and there's some differences that I just wouldn't agree with. We'd have to go into a different mindset to discuss this, but to enter the hotel property, visitors cross a guarded bridge, and guests frequently arrive via a chauffeured Rolls-Royce escort or private helicopter. I've been told this about the ultra rich, the people that can afford these $25,000 a night rooms, that I've never come close to witnessing some of the options that avail themselves when you are ultra rich. There's rich, and then there's ultra rich, and the worlds are massively separate, because you can literally ask for anything and it can be made. So there you go. The Bird helipad was converted into tennis court to host a match between Roger Federer and Andre Agassi in 2005. Goodness. What do you think of that? Would you play tennis up there? I don't know. There'd be too many puddles by the time the game actually got started. I'd slip and fall off the top. I'm sure there was a railing or something, but no, I wouldn't be up there. I've thrown myself out of an airplane several times, but I am not going to play. I'm not going to play tennis on there. But it has all kinds of stuff. A lot of tourist locations where their islands have similar, but just not to the level that I can imagine that the Bird has available. So if you want to go deeper into this, feel free to go over to Business Insider. Again, I'm going to scroll up real fast just so that you can see the title again. And we got a few more articles. The next one is in Hatch Ideas. Mass evacuation ordered in the Philippines after a volcano erupts with 2-mile-high plumes of steam and ash. And this is a volcano in the Philippines has erupted with plumes, forcing residents to evacuate per Reuters. The alert level for a Taal, Taal volcano was raised. I think it's pronounced Taal. Was raised from level 2 to level 3. A seismology agency said Taal's recent activity could trigger a volcanic tsunami. Let's click the link and maybe they'll show a couple of pictures. This is a businessinsider.com article written by Kate Duffy. And yeah, there's almost like a volcano season, if I recall correctly. And it's pretty much the opposite side of the world where summer might be. Is calm, and then summer sends it going nuts. You know, I could be completely wrong with this assertion and have my wires crossed, but every once in a while a volcano just opens up. There were some, or might still be going, in Iceland. That was fascinating to watch, and people were getting really close to it. I don't really agree with getting close to a volcano. And Hawaii here in the States has always had volcanic activity. So it says on a scale of 0 to 5, it's at a 3, and the plumes went up to 9,800 feet, according to Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology. So it looks like it's impacting at least 1,100 people that were evacuated. Let's scroll back up. And if it becomes a bigger thing and continues to be in the news, then we can talk about it here. Oh, did I not? I didn't do it again. There we go in chat. And this next article is in the Hatch Ideas channel. This person did a low spend challenge for 1 month, and it saved them more than $600 on eating out, but impulse purchases were harder to curb. So they said, or Melissa Petro is a freelance writer and mom of 2 who did a low spend challenge in February. She saved an estimated $600 on eating out and swapped online shopping with giving things away. Impulse purchases like a $25 donation and a $10 toy for her sick kid were harder to rein in. And they call it Frugal February. Is a no spend or low spend challenge that's grown in popularity since it started online in the early 2010s. Some people challenge themselves to go the whole month without spending a penny, while others use it. Probably my aggregator just chops off the article. Others use it as an opportunity to cut back on excess spending, like dining out or unnecessary clothes and entertainment purchases. Well, clothes are necessary. So do you think you could do that? Anybody in chat? want to take a stab at this. Dining in saves more than just money. By the way, this isn't true anymore. Due to inflation and the cost of products, and even at the retail level now. So if you go to, from what I have read and what I've been told, if you go to a restaurant now, it's almost on par, if not cheaper, to go out than it is to get the foods now in a store. And then you still have to deal with the cooking. But because of inflation and because of, if you've watched the previous episodes, you've seen that there is a lot of perceived corporate greed because of a conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And I always say it like that, but it's not a conflict between, it's an invasion of Ukraine by Russia. It wasn't like Ukraine was picking a fight with Russia. But anyway, because of this global turmoil, there are people that are raising their prices at the production level. Me looking back at level after level, strata after strata of producer to retail, I have seen that really the price is starting at the producer level, increasing. But nobody can figure out the true source of why inflation is taking place other than the definition of it, which is too much money chasing too few goods. But we don't have anything impacting global production anymore. And we've had 2 years to adjust to it. So it's so Brill says, most of my streams, I don't make money. Yeah. Live on noodles. Yeah. Yeah, I can't do it. I can't go full time. It would be impossible for me to survive if I go full time. So, I am looking forward to doing that. But I will have to grow, and I've only been doing it since the beginning of this year. But I would love to get more followers and show a trend. I do this every day for only an hour, so it's hard for people to really kind of buy into what I'm doing. But eventually I'll make it work. So they talk about all of the things that they did during this frugal February, and, not spending money out. It used to be much more expensive. But it really depends on what you eat now at home. Yeah. Yeah, I heard. So did that go well? You got another job? Well, I hope they give you some flexibility in what you need to do. So dining in saves more money, more than just money. That's true. You don't have to travel anymore. You don't have to give any tips to anybody. But dining out, you have to do all of the cleaning and cooking, and so. But you get to spend time with the family, and that's what they say in this article. The author says, "I don't want to look if I'm not going to buy," and that's another thing. You see something and you want to purchase it. The line between necessary and discretionary spending is subjective. Yes. And there's more to this article, so be sure to go over to it and check it out. And got 2 more articles. And the next article is, because I am interested in tiny homes. I find them efficient, effective, capable. It really depends on what you are looking for. And sometimes a tiny home does the job perfectly. And there are all the spectrum of tiny home owner is pretty broad. The only time that it really kind of breaks somebody from being able to live in a tiny home is if you cater to a large audience quite often. Like if you have people over, if you're entertaining a lot, then a tiny home really doesn't do it unless everybody agrees to being outside. And you can't do that year round in most places. But this is Austin, Texas based 3D printing construction company Icon, which I have heard of, has unveiled a luxury printed home with an ADU. The ADU tiny home and the 2,000 square foot home were printed at the same time in 8 days. And now you can see inside it. So let's click the link and go over to Business Insider. And it's an article written by Brittany Chang. And let's see here. Let's scroll down. There's quite a bit, so I suppose that it's graphics. Okay, so tiny homes may be small compared to the typical home, but the market for downsized living is almost as hot as that of the housing market. And what you're looking at, and if you're listening to this in the podcast, basically, if you've ever seen a 3D printed object, the cement 3D printed house is identical to that, layer after layer of cement or material. Sometimes it's mud, 3D printed, just pancaked on top of each other until it reaches the height that's intended for final production. And so you actually get to see the lines. Some people would really appreciate seeing those lines, but you can actually go back and smooth those out, much like a 3D printer. And we'll continue down here. Tiny living has skyrocketed in popularity over the past few years, leaving tiny home makers with long wait lists and potential consumers with months of waiting. I actually want a tiny home. I'm going to keep scrolling down here. I think this might be kind of just little snippets and images. Yeah. So one of the things that you don't really get in a 3D printed home is sharp edged corners unless somebody goes in and smooths those corners over or they are finished after the fact. But in this, Icon kind of highlights that it's a 3D printed house by leaving the striations in the walls inside and out. But one of the benefits of this is that it's a solid mass, so it's much quieter inside. Insulation is great, and depending on the market, you don't need additional insulation. But you have to remember that cement, concrete, actually acts like a heat sink. It'll keep on absorbing cold or heat, and it'll just transfer right on through eventually. I used to make a line of cement products, but over the years, research has shown that cement adds quite a bit to greenhouse gases because it off-gases pretty much its entire existence. And so I stopped doing that. If I can find another solution that lowers that carbon footprint, then I'll probably reintroduce it. But they have a bunch of pictures of these 3D printed houses from Icon. And not all of them are the same. But it's pretty neat because once you put the design in, all it takes is a few people to make sure that the printing is on track. And sometimes they have to put some reinforcements in certain places, like above windows and whatnot. But it all depends on the 3D printing algorithm. So looks pretty neat. I would love to have one. Okay, but there is a lot more in this article, so feel free to go over to businessinsider.com and just do a search for see inside a luxury 350 square foot 3D printed tiny home in Austin. And it's in chat. And so the next article, pardon me, and the last one for night is again Elon Musk. He's just been in the news a lot in the last 24 hours. This is in the Hatch Ideas channel. It's an article by J.C. Hong. Elon Musk discussed how great, quote unquote, great Russian engines are following Russia's decision to stop U.S. sales. Boeing and Lockheed Martin's joint ULA venture uses the Russian-made RD-180 engine. Musk suggested SpaceX wouldn't be impacted as its designs are its own rockets. And frankly, let me just click this link. This article is actually over at Business Insider, written by Zara Tayeb and Sam Tabaridi. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing that name properly. And so I guess they did an interview with Matthias Dopfner, the CEO of Insider's parent company, Axel Springer, which took place at Tesla's factory in Fremont, California. And I guess this is one of the continuing conversations that were broken up into multiple articles. But I think at this point, there isn't anything that can be done somewhere else that can't be done within the United States. With a lot of the fundamental research that has been done, particularly now with SpaceX in-house, these rockets, I've always had a problem with relying on a third party wholly without having a failover to some other solution. And in this case, if everything is just kind of penned in by what amounts to an aggressor country, you've got to bring it in-house. And now you have to bring it in-house permanently, because you can't risk not being able to go up to space to retrieve at least your astronauts or cosmonauts for that sense. Because right now in the International Space Station, there are both cosmonauts and astronauts. I'm not sure who all is up there, but I know that there's 2 different countries at least. And it's a real shame that they were actually dragged into this conflict. But we have a history in aerospace, so let's exploit our strategic capabilities and build our own rockets. The difference between getting it from somewhere else and getting it locally is cost, not productivity, not capability, because we definitely can do it in-house. And I hope that y'all agree. And if not, let me know in chat. All of these articles are up for discussion both on ohmTown.com and here in Twitch and over on YouTube and in the podcast. But I prefer actually the real-time interaction here on Twitch. And with that in mind, this is the front page, and every time you click on the ohmTown logo, it'll refresh and give you a whole new set unless I've broken something. And that's quite possible because I'm always changing things. And ta-da, we have another set of articles. And by no means is this just the limit of the new. In the last hour, there have been quite a few articles imported into the system. And I've been removing some really older ones and duplicates. And so we're at about 250,000 still in articles as things have been pulled into the system. So with that in mind, we're all done for tonight. And I hope you enjoyed the show.